an IUL, you actually have two values. You have your net surrender value, and then you have your accumulation value. Okay, so your accumulation value is basically completely arbitrary. They're saying, based on the projected growth, here's what we think the policy will be worth in the future. This is like a pro forma. If you're in the real estate world, it's a future projection. It's not actually guaranteed. It's not true. It's not something we can base anything off. The net surrender value, this is the actual cash value. All right, so I think we're live with Jorge. How are you today?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. What is your question?
Yeah, my question is, well, actually, I posted two questions. One question is, when the bank buys life insurance, who's the beneficiary when they're buying this life insurance?
That's a really good question. So the beneficiary is typically going to be a key employee of the bank. So they'll often insure the insured will often be a key employee of the bank. The beneficiary will often be the bank itself. Sometimes the bank will split the death benefit with maybe the family or the survivors of the person they insured, depending on if it's like an executive compensation type policy or not. If it's just straight for the benefit of the bank, then generally the bank itself will be the beneficiary.
Okay, but it's based on somebody eventually dying, right? Because the bank will continue living, but this one person, when the person dies, that's when they get the money.
That's correct. Yep, and then they'll borrow against that the entire time, even while that person is living.
I see. And the second question, when you talk about net surrendered value, is that what they sometimes call the insurance, the cash value? Is that the same thing you were referring to?
Yeah, exactly. And I usually call it the cash value. The reason I called it the net surrender value today specifically is because on an IUL, you actually have two values. You have your net surrender value, and then you have your accumulation value. Okay, so your accumulation value is basically completely arbitrary. They're saying, based on the projected growth, here's what we think the policy will be worth in the future. This is like a pro forma. If you're in the real estate world, it's a future projection. It's not actually guaranteed. It's not true. It's not something we can base anything off. The net surrender value, this is the actual cash value. The reason why I said net surrender instead of cash value is with an IUL, you have what's called a surrender charge. So let's say that I put money into an IUL, and in year 3, I'm like, I don't want this anymore, right? There's going to be a fee for me to take my money out, and that fee might be 6 or 7% that I'm going to pay in order to exit. And so I'm only going to get the net value after the surrender is paid. And that's why we would not call this generally the same as cash value, because on a whole life policy, you don't have that fee. If I wanted to cancel tomorrow, I can pull 100% of my cash value out right now, and there's not that fee included. Versus on the IUL, you pay a surrender charge and you don't actually get the accumulation value. So that's the answer on the why behind that. But that's a good question that Jorge asked there. All right, so someone asked, you say high yield, etc. so fast I can't write it down. What is it called? Okay, so the whole life policy, this is called high early cash value dividend paying whole life insurance. And this is why we call it the sacred account. That's way too many syllables, but that's what it's called. Sometimes you'll hear it called the infinite banking concept or cash flow banking. Sometimes you might even just like in illustrations, you'll just see HECV, HECV, high early cash value. HECV. We just call it the sacred account just because it's too much to be like high early cash value dividend paying whole life insurance. And that's why I say it fast. I've been saying it for so many years, but we just call it the sacred account just to avoid all of that nonsense. Okay, we have a question from Ryan Sherwood. Let me bring Ryan on live here and answer his question. All right, so we are live here with Ryan. Ryan, how are you doing today?
Good, good. Yeah, I just had a question on, comparing this, as far as taking a loan out, like securities-based lending, some of the firms allow you to take a loan against your securities.
Yes, so securities-based lending, for those of you that may not know what that is, if you own a stock or you own, a fund of some sort, sometimes you can get a line of credit and borrow against them. The main difference on like borrowing from a life insurance policy is number one, you're going to be able to borrow a lot higher value. So on a securities-based loan, oftentimes you'll only be able to borrow maybe 40 to maybe 70% of the value. On a whole life insurance policy, you're going to be able to borrow, 90, 95% on the upside. Depending on who you're doing the loan with. The other one is with securities-based lending. Securities can go up and down and investment value can change. And so you can have an event called a margin call where when I borrowed, my shares were worth 100 and now all of a sudden they're only worth 70. And so I've borrowed, my loan still is based on $100 a share, but my actual shares are only worth 70 and now I've got a deficit. So the securities-based lenders are going to sell my shares at a loss in order to recuperate their money. And so that's a risk with securities-based lending. With whole life insurance, that doesn't exist. It can't lose. So there's no such thing as a margin call. I also, with the whole life policy, never have to pay the loan back if I don't want to, because there's a death benefit. That death benefit will pay off any outstanding loans when I die. So I don't condone that. I think you should always pay yourself back. But with a securities-based loan, you have to. There's not an option not to. You have that option with a whole life. And then also the interest is different. With a whole life policy, it's interest only, paid once per year. With a securities-based loan, generally, that's going to be monthly interest you've got to pay as well. So those are some of the main differences. And so that's something that, if you're doing securities-based lending, for sure, you can do some similar things, but there will definitely be some primary differences versus doing a whole life policy. Okay, Nicholas has a question. Let me bring Nicholas on and we'll answer his question here. Really good questions today, guys. All right, we're live with Nicholas. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Yourself?
Hey, I'm doing good. What is your question?
My question was on the repayment of the loan. Is it important or how important is it to accelerate those payments if possible? I mean, does it have like a positive effect in terms of returns with the interest rates on the loan?
Yeah, it definitely does. So with a whole life policy, when I'm taking a policy loan, I always do want to pay myself back. So my rule is if I'm paying off debt, whatever like if I paid off, let's say a car loan and it was a $400 a month car payment, that old payment that I used to make on the car loan, I'm always going to pay myself back with it, right? So I'm going to pay my policy loan off with that same number. If I pay off, let's say if I do an investment, I pull out $50,000, I do an investment, it's paying me $500-600 a month. That income, I'm going to pay all that income towards my policy loan, right? What that does is it obviously, it reduces my interest cost. Because a life insurance policy loan is a line of credit, if I pay the loan down, then my interest is being calculated off of a smaller number every single time I make that payment. And so it actually reduces my total interest cost, which gives me a better profit spread between my earning rate and my interest rate for borrowing that I've got to pay, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is when I pay back a policy loan, it is the same function as saving money in a savings account. And the reason being, if I put it back into the policy loan, I can pull it right back out again, right? Versus if I put it in a bank, I can pull it right back out again. It's the same function. I still have full control and full access over it. So I always would say service your loans, pay them down early. You don't have to like try and pay them off aggressively, like if it was a credit card. Definitely you can if you want to, but at the very minimum, if you paid off debt, whatever the old payment was gets paid back. If you invested, whatever the income was, I would get paid back on. And then if it's like a purchase, like I buy a car or, like I self-financed my couch just because I could. I put myself on a 5-year term and say, I'm going to pay my policy loan back over the next 5 years. Here's my monthly payment. Very similar to like what a bank would do.
If you're wondering what does Wealth Dynamics do, how can we actually help you? Number one, if you haven't gotten a copy of my book, Blueprint to Financial Freedom, grab one now. You can get that down in the comments in the video. You can get the link for that. And finally, if you have a desire to start getting help walking through these different phases toward financial freedom, book a call with my team. Go to our website, set up a call. We're able to help out and answer questions. That's how we can help you. Thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe. Make sure you turn notifications on, and I will talk to you guys on the next video.